Welcome, folks. As we told you yesterday, Michael was a Category 3, but it's moved into a Category 4. They say it's going to be the worst storm ever to hit the Gulf Coast of Florida. Never in history has anything of this powerful come across. 145 miles per hour. And not only is it a Category 4, but on the edges it'll be spawning not only tornadoes, but hurricanes. You know, in Richmond, that last storm, they had 13 hurricanes, and who knows how many as this thing goes inland. But it's moving very rapidly, and it'll be soon. It'll sweep up through Georgia, Alabama, and then into the Carolinas. And it's going right on up. As a matter of fact, in another day or two, it'll be up here in Virginia where we live. It's just unbelievable. But as I say, it's the strongest in 150, maybe ever years. I say 150 years, but maybe ever. But the death toll and the storm surge is going to be monumental. If anybody has tried to weather it out, they're making a big mistake. It's going to be devastating.
Yeah,
Wendy.
we just hope people have had time to get out. But Michael is expected to make landfall near Panama City Beach today. The Panhandle faces devastating wind damage, catastrophic storm surges of up to 13 feet or more. As Charlene Aaron tells us, Florida is under a high state of emergency.
Overnight, Michael strengthened to a monster Category 4 storm, taking direct aim at the Florida Panhandle.
Do not underestimate the power of this storm. This will be devastating.
There are concerns Michael could strengthen before making landfall later today.
We're talking about landfall this afternoon near Panama City Beach. Gusts up to 160 miles per hour. Movement here still keeps us a hurricane into early tonight. That's going to be well north of the 10s. We're talking about widespread trees down, power lines down, but again, making landfall mid-afternoon as a Category 4 hurricane.
Forecasters warn the storm could become one of the Panhandle's worst hurricanes in memory.
This is the worst storm to ever strike the Florida Panhandle. Hands down. It's going to beat Opal, going to blow away Dennis from 2005. And it's one of only a handful of storms in the past 30 years that's hitting as intense as it has been.
Some 375,000 people up and down the Gulf Coast have been urged or ordered to evacuate ahead of life-threatening storm surge, hurricane-force winds, and heavy rainfall.
Remember, we can rebuild your house. We cannot rebuild your life. Think about your kids, your grandkids, all your family members. Take care of them. Take this seriously and keep your family safe.
Some are heeding the warning, taking to shelters.
Understanding that this storm may be a little bit more intense than the others, so I think it's a good idea if people are concerned that they have an option. Come here or some of the other shelters.
Others plan to ride out the storm.
We're hunkered down the way we need to be. We're well prepared. We understand the severity, and we'll be good to go.
While Michael is likely to weaken as it moves across the southeastern United States, its heavy rains and flooding effects will spread far and wide. Tropical storm watches are in effect in coastal areas of Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina.
The problem in the Carolinas, this is the kind of storm's going to knock down some trees and power lines in areas that they've just put it back up. But there's going to be a swath of 3 to 6, locally 12-inch rains in the areas that Florence hit. And those rivers aren't back in their banks yet in a lot of cases, so that's going to re-aggravate flood problems.
President Trump has declared a state of emergency in Florida, authorizing FEMA to coordinate relief efforts and provide federal money and help. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
You know, Wendy, I went down shortly after Hugo hit South Carolina, and it was like somebody had taken an axe and the trees, just thousands of them were cut off, right, you know, at about 3 feet above their base, and just chopped down. Thousands of trees. Same thing's going to happen down there in Florida. All that pine foliage that's there, those trees, they'll be wiped out. It'll be devastating. They have no conception of how bad it's going to be.
I was living in South Carolina right before Hugo. I went back because my parents had a place down there, and the bridges, you couldn't even get to the bridges to check the damage of what was going on. But anything that wasn't sturdy was gone. I mean, it was just no more.
You know, I remember we set up our cameras in the main street of Charleston because there wasn't anybody there. And there was a roof of one of the commercial buildings. It was a tin roof, and it was like a piece of paper. You know, you get a piece of paper and you do it like this. That's what that, it was balled up like that and it thrown down in the middle of the street. That was so devastating, but I think the people of the Panhandle have no conception of what this thing's going to do to them. And boy, if there's any possibility of getting it, maybe too late now to get out.
It's supposed to hit today, this afternoon. I mean, the reporters that were on the TV this morning said it's 8 hours away. So, you know, by the time this airs, it'll be 7 hours.
The roads are all jammed up. Well, this is one of those that they should be doing something about. Now, Operation Blessing is mobilizing to help storm victims in Florida. Our representatives will be on the ground assessing needs and working with churches and government agencies to provide assistance once the storm clears. We'll have water, we'll have cots, we'll have tents, we'll have tarps, we'll have food, we'll have all that kind of stuff and medical assistance. So I think it's so important. So we'll swing away from that. We mentioned South Carolina. There's a young lady who was governor down there. As I understand, she's from a background of Hindu, of faith, and she is a dedicated Christian, a wonderful person, and has been a superb governor and one of the best UN ambassadors we have ever had, Nikki Haley. She's now said, look, I've had 8 years in government service, and I'm going to step down. I'm giving my notice well in advance. And at the end of this year, she'll be replaced. So who's going to replace her? Well, there's several. One is a executive at Goldman Sachs, and the ambassador at Germany is another. They're under consideration. John Jessup has more on that story.
That's right, Pat. As you were saying, President Trump has a list of names to replace outgoing Ambassador Nikki Haley at the United Nations, but he's taking some time to make his decision. Haley's announcement that she's leaving the administration surprised many, but not the president. CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy has more.
Haley initially told President Trump of her plans to resign about 6 months ago. She now made it official and plans to stay at her post until the end of the year.
I think you have to be selfless enough to know when you step aside and allow someone else to do the job. So thank you, Mr. President. It's been an honor of a lifetime.
UN Ambassador Nikki Haley becomes the latest in a line of high-profile departures from the White House.
It was a blessing to go into the UN with body armor every day and defend America.
She represented the U.S. with a strong voice at the UN, speaking out on North Korea, Russia, and Iran. Haley went on the attack against Syria's President Bashar al-Assad for the use of chemical weapons on civilians.
The monster who was responsible for these attacks has no conscience, not even to be shocked by pictures of dead children.
She stood up for those without a voice when the U.S. withdrew from the UN Human Rights Council.
When a so-called Human Rights Council cannot bring itself to address the massive abuses in Venezuela and Iran, and it welcomes the Democratic Republic of Congo as a new member, the Council ceases to be worthy of its name.
While at the same time fighting for Israel.
I think you look at the anti-Israel bias and the strength and courage that the president showed in moving the embassy.
She cited her Christian faith as a reason to support Israel, later teaming up with the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to work toward a peace deal with the Palestinians.
What I've done working with him on the Middle East peace plan, it is so unbelievably well done.
Haley sat down with CBN's chief analyst, David Brody, to talk about her impact on the UN.
Since day one, you've gone in there to shake things up. How tough has that been?
Every day I put on body armor because I know there's going to be a fight. I'm just fighting a different thing every day.
Senators confirmed the former South Carolina governor as U.S. ambassador to the UN on day 4 of Trump's presidency by a vote of 96-4. She will end up serving nearly 2 years at her post, citing it was time to step aside.
You've been fantastic. You're my friend. And I just, on behalf of the country, I want to thank you for a great job. Thank you.
Now, President Trump said he will name a successor in the next 2 or 3 weeks. As for what's next, Haley said she will not run in 2020 and will support President Trump's re-election. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
Thanks, Ben. And President Trump says he's narrowed his list of possible replacements down to 5 people, and one name reportedly on the list is former Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell. Israelis were as surprised as Americans at the resignation of Ambassador Haley following the announcement that she'd wrap up her 2-year tenure at the United Nations. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted, "I would like to thank Ambassador Nikki Haley, who led the uncompromising struggle against hypocrisy at the UN and on behalf of the truth and justice of our country." On the sidelines of September's General Assembly, Prime Minister Netanyahu told Haley she helped roll back anti-Semitism at the UN.
The hall still permeates with the stench of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic resolutions, which are the same. And I want to thank you for clearing the air.
And Pat, he added that Haley was one of the best friends Israel has had at the United Nations in a long time.
Well, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the United Nations has served its purpose and should be replaced. I counsel, and I still counsel, some kind of a conference of democratic nations, and that's what we need, because the General Assembly is just a joke. Time after time, they pass anti-American and anti-Israeli resolutions over and over again. They never say anything about Assad. They never say anything about any of the Arab dictators. They never say anything about Soviet Russia. They always talk about America and Israel. It is just an exercise in futility. Those people are overpaid. They get a lot more money than our foreign diplomats. They live in great luxury, and they couldn't care less about what they're doing. They just vote willy-nilly on these things. And, you know, we've got the Security Council, and the Security Council under Obama failed to object to a resolution against Israel, which was just, well, it was threatening to the whole nation. It made them an outlaw state. And the United States has the power of veto in the Security Council. The thing is set up there. The General Assembly is a big debating body, but they have no real power. The power is in the Security Council, and it's a few of the leaders of the nations who were fighting against Nazi Germany in World War II. And so we have a veto in that, but it's a waste of money. We're taking up maybe 40% of their budget, 30% or so, is paid for by the American taxpayer. I think it's time to stop. And we ought to reconstitute a community of democratic nations would be the answer. And I think that's what's got to be done. But I don't know if there's any political will to do that or not. They would scream at you. But when you see the people who are on there, for example, as Nikki Haley talked about their so-called Human Rights Council, and then you've got these vicious dictators. I mean, it's just a farce what they're doing. It's a waste of money, and it's time we get another organization that will be more effective. That's World War II, and it's been 40, 50, 60 years, however many years it's been since its creation. Now it's time for a new world order. Wendy.
I'm really going to miss her. Do you think she'll reemerge in some other office at some point?
Of course she will. I mean, she's too popular. I don't know if, you know, Senate. I mean, after having been the main focus of the United States of the General Assembly, she was free. I don't know. There might be some appointive position, but she'd make a great Secretary of State, for example. I mean, if Pompeo...
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if that's in the cards at some time in the future.
Her and Trump. Right. I think everybody loves her, and so what do we do? I mean, you know, she's got a family. Maybe she just wants to take it easy for a while.
Hey, that sounds good too.
She got to strap on body armor every day to fight the fight. So you know, you get tired of fighting. Well, God bless her, and pray for this wonderful lady. All right. Amen.